Hello there, and welcome to review session for exam 3 in Botany 101. I'm Angela Nishimura. Welcome back. Okay, so we're going to talk about now. We're going to continue, right? We're going to talk about conifers, okay, in terms of their edibility. Okay, Joel Gibbons, the guy that was on that commercial, he was a naturalist, yeah. So he said many parts of pine trees are edible. Okay, including the inner parts, okay, such as the bark, such as the phloem and the cambium. Okay, they were used for emergency food. Okay, and they also had sugar, so they were like a sweet too. Okay, some people could eat it raw. Some dried it and ground it up. Okay, some boiled it. Some stored dried strips. These are all different kind of Native American peoples. Okay, also, early settlers in New England ate candied strips of eastern white pine in particular. Okay. So people could drink a tea from the needles to prevent scurvy, source of vitamin C here. You can see this concoction on the slide. So seeds of nearly all pines are edible. So the ones from Western North America are the largest and the best tasting. Okay, so they have a high protein. Protein is 15% to 30% protein, and much of the remainder of what makes it up are oils. Okay, so he's looking at a seed of a conifer. Okay, and seeds of conifers. I guess you call them pine nuts sometimes. Now, another product of conifers are the resins made amber. Okay, so amber was formed between 60 and 70 million years ago in the Baltic areas and in the Dominican Republic. Okay, 60 to 70 million years ago. Okay, that's when it was first formed from conifers. Okay, so these are lumps of translucent material, and they usually have an orange to yellow tint, although sometimes you can have some that are greenish looking or grayish looking. Okay, some lumps can weigh 100 pounds. Okay, and the supply of amber was at its peak at the start of the 1900s. I believe now they also use amber, fossil amber, to make perfumes with too. Here's a look at some amber jewelry. So amber is considered a semi-precious stone, and in fact it was considered to be all the holdings of a land area or from an ocean area or from a sea area or from a river or from a lake were held to be owned by these medieval princes and dukes and lords, So in fact, if a common person went and tried to harvest amber and try to sell it and they caught them, they had the right, legally, to hang them there and then, That's what some people did, okay? Because amber was considered to be part of their personal property. Now there are other products that come from plant resins, including menthol for use in cigarettes, okay, floor waxes, printer's ink, paper coatings, and perfumes, okay. Okay, then now we come to the angiosperms, okay, and they number more than 250,000 species, more than 250,000 species. Now, angion means vessel, and sperma means seed. It means a seed is in a vessel. And what is the vessel? The vessel is a carpel, okay? And that's an enrolled leaf with seeds. Remember that a flower itself is a short shoot axis with modified leaves, right? So an example of a carpel, an enrolled leaf with seeds, is like a green pea pod, okay? When you had one or more carpels, that is equivalent to what we call a pistil, okay? So after pollination and fertilization, The ovary becomes a fruit, within which is the ovule that has a seed, and the fertilized egg becomes the embryo, the new baby plant of the next generation. Okay? So all angiosperms are in the phylum Magnoliophyta. Okay? And they're put into two classes. First of all, you have the Magnoliopsida, which are the dicots, here illustrated by magnolia flowers, and the Liliopsida, which are the monocots, illustrated by this particular lily. Okay? So you have the dicots and monocots, a refrain that we've heard several times this semester. Okay? Now the angiosperms are the most diverse of all the plants. Okay? All the way from the bryophytes all the way up to the gymnosperms. Okay? They're the most diverse. The ancestors are evolved from gymnosperms. Okay? So flowers evolved. Okay? Flowers evolved in order to take advantage of animals. Okay? When the flowers are doing their sexual reproduction. So always remember that a flower is a sex organ, okay, of the plant, or the flowering plant. So first you have pollination, that animals might be used by the plants to transfer pollen from an anther of one plant to the stigma of another. Okay. Also, animals were used in seed dispersal, and are used for seed dispersal. They eat the fruit, okay, and then poop out the seeds along with some fertilizer. Okay. Here's a look at angiosperm flower with a pollinator there. Looks like a bee. Okay. Now reproduction in angiosperms. Okay, here you go. Here you have the flower. Okay. Here you have the ovary there on the left. There you have the anther on the right. Okay. And in both you have meiosis happening to the megaspore in the ovary and the microspore in the anther. Okay, giving rise to the embryo sac, okay, or the megagametophyte in the ovary, and the microgametophyte or the pollen in the anther, okay. And so when pollination happens, when pollen is transferred onto the stigma, and it's the right kind of pollen, the pollen germinates and then grows down through the style, down into the ovary, and you have two sperms, right? Okay. Anyway, so the transfer of pollen from the anther to the stigma is what we call pollination. Okay. So fertilization after that might not occur for a while. Okay. Okay. And pollination is usually done by insects or wind. Okay. Other organisms such as birds, bats, or other mammals, or other sort of phenomena such as water or gravity might affect pollination, depending on the species, depending on the flower. Sometimes some flowers will do self-pollination if they're self-compatible. Remember, it's called selfing. So after pollination, yeah, the further development of the female gametophyte might not happen, okay, unless pollen is from a different plant of the same species, okay, or from a different variety of plant of the same species, okay. That occurs except for some crop plants, okay, such as wheat, rice, oats, peas, and beans, okay. Furthermore, the cytoplasm of the pollen then will absorb fluids from the stigma, so the cytoplasm of the pollen bulges and grows a pollen tube. Okay, that grows through the stigma and through the style. Okay, then reaches the micropyle in the ovary, and in corn, amazingly, it can grow 20 inches, the pollen tube. Okay, so then the contents of the pollen are discharged, sometimes forcibly. Okay, so the vegetative nucleus will be at the tip. Okay, and the generative cell lags, and the generative cell produces two sperms. Okay, so a male gametophyte is a pollen with a vegetative nucleus and two sperms. okay, or a three nucleated cell. Okay, so the pollen tube continues to grow until it reaches the female gametophyte. Okay, that's what we see here. The pollen tube growing there at the lower right. Okay, also at the lower left, you see the pollen tube there in orange, heading into the ovary. Okay, so one sperm fuses with the egg, and that becomes a zygote, which will develop into the embryo. Okay. The second sperm fuses with the central cell nuclei, also known as the polar nuclei, and that forms triploid endosperm. And this endosperm surrounds the embryo. Okay. And the endosperm has, the development of endosperm was a major development, okay, because it's a superior form of nutrition, okay, and has been a major source of nutrients for human, such as wheat, rice, and corn, okay. It's actually the endosperm that provides all that nutrients. Okay, so here's looking at double fertilization. See one sperm in purple there fusing with the egg in red. The other purple sperm fusing with the blue polar nuclei. Okay. And eventually what you'll end up with, what you see on the right. Okay, the embryo and the endosperm. Now pollination. Okay, pollination needs to be done usually by wind or by insect. But pollinators, such as insects or birds, co-evolve with plants or bats. Okay. So the relationships can be highly specialized, such as bees tend to pollinate blue or yellow flowers, okay, such as Widelia or Chinese violet. Okay, there's Chinese violet there on the right, weedy plant that you see a lot here in Hawaii. Okay. Beetles tend to be attracted to yeasty or spicy or fruity odors. And usually the flower is white or dull in color. Okay. Now fly-pollinated flowers tend to be kind of badly smelling of rotten meat or fecal matter, okay, such as Stapelia gigantea, which we see in Hawaii too. Okay. Like night-active moths also tend to be attracted to white or light-colored flowers. Okay, these flowers also tend to be sweetly fragrant because moths don't see very well at night anyway, you know, even though they're oftentimes active at night. So a good example of a night-active moth-pollinated flower are the gardenias. Okay. Also, butterfly-pollinated flowers tend to be colorful, blue, yellow, or orange, such as lantana, as you see here. Okay. Then birds. Of course, birds are not insects, but they're animals. Okay. They're usually attracted to flowers that are bright red or yellow in color. And these flowers tend to have little or no odor because birds, with few exceptions, lack a sense of smell. Okay. Flowers need to be fairly large to be able to accommodate the bird and its bill. And because of its bill, it makes copious nectar for the bird to feed on. Okay, because of course the bird is not visiting the flower to pollinate it, it's visiting the flower to actually get food in the form of nectar. Birds are high energy animals and they need a lot of calories to keep themselves alive. Okay, California fuchsias are an example of a bird-pollinated flower. Okay. Now a mammal, such as bats, okay, the kind of flowers they tend to pollinate tend to be dull in color, okay, large flowers, and since bats are oftentimes active at night, the flowers are open at night. So a good example of a bat-pollinated plant is the organ pipe cactus. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the origin of cultivated plant. This is a photograph of Jack Harlan. Okay. He and his students actually ran the Crop Evolution Laboratory at the University of Illinois. Okay, and what he did, he built on the foundation of other people, but he associated crop origins with certain regions. Okay, so we had the Near Eastern region. Okay, and that included the Mediterranean, Northern Europe, Turkey, the Balkans, Pakistan, and Iran. Okay, so all these different kind of foods that originated from the Near Eastern region, what I want you to remember are wheat and lentil and apple, okay, as examples of plants from the Near Eastern region. Okay, here we have some plants. It looks like, let's see, grasses, barley. Okay, asparagus it looks like. Okay, now from the Chinese region, okay, the plants I want you to remember are the bamboo, the peach, and the soybean. Okay, here's some bamboo, there's some lychee, there's something else. Then from the African continent, we have yam, okay, okra, coffee, among others. Okay. In South Asia and the Pacific Islands, such as South Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Melanesia, the Philippines, and other Pacific Islands, we have a whole bunch of different kinds of plants. But I want you to remember sugarcane, banana, and rice as originating from this area. Okay? We have pictures of some plants that originate from these areas here. Okay. Now in North America, we have the sunflower, cranberry, blueberry, and tobacco. Okay, that's all the four. There's not much that came out that North America gave to the world in terms of crops. Okay. Then South and Central America, corn, peanut, and pineapple. That's what I want you to remember, even though there's a whole range of different things that come from this area. Corn, peanuts, cashews, pineapple, etc. Okay, peyote. Okay. Now we're going to go into a survey of some of the plant families that have been influential on human history and human economics. First of all, we have dicots in the Lauraceae. Okay, some of their traits are they have primitive flowers and they don't have petals, but their sepals are sometimes petal-like. Okay. They have stamens in 3 or 4 whorls of 3 each, and there are approximately 1,000 species. Okay, and most of these 1,000 species are tropical shrubs and trees. Okay, here we have a picture of a member of the family, okay, of the laurel family. So the family name comes from laurel, and the laurel their leaves were used by the ancient Greeks to crown the winners of athletic competitions, okay, like you see here. So you talk about resting on your laurels when somebody's achieved a lot and feel that they can just kind of kick back and relax. Okay. Don't do that. Okay, now, some members of the laurel family include cinnamon. Okay, so cinnamon is the pulverized bark of a tree that's native to South Asia. Cassia is very similar, and sometimes they're kind of used interchangeably. Cassia and cinnamon, okay? So both have been used for thousands of years for perfumes, anointing oils, also for seasoning food, of course. Okay, camphor also has been in use since ancient times as cold remedies, okay? Inhalants, okay? Insecticides, perfumes. You have a lump of camphor there being heated, okay? So the essence comes from wood chips. And another member of the laurel family is sassafras, okay, which is used as a flavoring for soft drinks and gums and mouthwashes. Sassafras. You ever heard of sassafras tea? Right? Okay, the next family that we're going to cover in this particular review are the mustard family. Okay, also known as the Brassicaceae. So you need to know the family names. Okay, the Lauraceae, the Brassicaceae. Okay, so they're also known as the cruciferæ. Okay, crucifers, because they have 4 petals in the shape of a cross. Okay, they also have 4 sepals and 6 stamens. Okay. And the fruits they produce are all siliques or silicoles. So here's a look at flowers of a member of the mustard family. So there are approximately 2,500 species, and they all have this in common. They when they're wounded, they give off this pungent, watery juice. Okay. So nearly all of them are herbs in the temperate and cooler areas of the northern hemisphere. So they're native to Europe and Asia, okay? At least, and North America. They include things like cabbage and Chinese cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, radish, kohlrabi, turnip, horseradish, watercress, rutabaga. Okay, cabbage. Chinese cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, radish, kohlrabi, turnip, horseradish, watercress, and rutabaga. Quite a mouthful. Okay, so mustard itself is a mixture of dried and ground seeds of 2 species of brassica. Remember brassica or lauraceae were all those different kinds of broccoli and cabbage relatives, right? So canola oil is a source of HDL, which is heart-healthy fats, high-density lipoproteins. Okay, so here we have a picture of different kind of mustards in various forms. Okay, another dicot are the legume family known as the Fabaceae. Okay, they also were known as the Leguminosae. That's an alternate name, but know them as the Fabaceae. Okay, they number about 13,000 species. It's a fairly large group. Okay, so the flowers are either radial or bilateral. Okay. And the bilateral flowers have a keel, wing petals, and a banner petal. So the stamens are fused around, okay, in a tube around the ovary. Here you see the banner up there, the keel, the wing, fused stamens, the pistil in the center, okay. So look at a bilateral flower. So the fruit of the legume fruit is a common feature of the member of this family. And these include the peas, the beans, various kinds of beans, soybeans, lentils, peanuts, alfalfa, sweet clover, jicama, licorice, and wattle. Okay, the wattle is an Australian tree. Okay, which is a source of tannins. So here we have peas, kidney beans, lima beans, garbanzos, soybeans, alfalfa, jicama, wattle, okay, golden wattle, okay. Now carob is used as a chocolate substitute. It's still in the legume family. And the wing bean has made news recently in the last few years as a high protein source. All parts of the plant are edible, okay? So that may be a savior for the tropical areas in terms of saving the soil and growing food. So some members of the legume family that we see in Hawaii, especially our koa, which is known as acacia koa, which were used by Hawaiian people for the wa'a or canoes, outrigger canoes or double hull canoes, okay? Another member of the legume family is a koa haole, which just means a foreign koa, Lucina leucocephala, which has been used to fix nitrogen. Many of the legumes have symbiotic bacteria that help them fix nitrogen, from atmospheric nitrogen into nitrogen that's available to the plants in the soil. Okay. There we go. Wing bean, acacia koa, and Lucina leucocephala. Okay. Okay, the next dicot family we're going to talk about are the nightshade family, okay, also known as Solanaceae. Okay, Solanaceae. Okay. So some traits they have fused petals, as you saw in that flower. Okay. The filaments of the stamens are fused to the corolla or the petals. Okay. The superior ovary becomes a berry or a capsule, and there are more than 3,000 species of Solanaceae, and they have alternate leaves for leaf arrangement. And they could be herbs or shrubs or trees or vines. Okay? Some of them include tomato, white potato, eggplant, pepper, tobacco, petunia, datura. Okay? Many produce poisonous drugs like datura. Okay. Some may have medicinal uses. Okay. Another member of the group is the deadly nightshade or belladonna. Okay, that's what the family is named after, the nightshade family. Okay. Was used by women to dilate their pupils to make them look more soft-eyed, I guess, for men. Pepper capsicum is another member of the nightshade family. Okay, so there are some people with food allergies who cannot eat any member of this family. Okay, there's a lot of different things: tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, pepper. Okay, and tobacco, of course, produces the drug nicotine, which can be used has been used as an insecticide. Okay, also used as a worming medication, antihelminthics. Okay. Nicotine is an addictive drug that can be responsible for heart disease and respiratory diseases, and also, of course, famously, cancers. Okay, so don't smoke. Okay, so tomato is a popular vegetable. Okay, but of course, it's actually a fruit, the part that we eat. Okay, also white potato. They're more than 357 million tons of white potato harvested each year. Okay. Main producers are China, India, US, and Russia. Okay. So the tubers tend to turn green when they're exposed to light. Okay, and there are poisons that are made in the green area. So do not eat green potatoes. Okay. Here's a look at a potato plant. You see the tubers at the end of the roots. Another member of the nightshade family is popolo. Okay, Solanum americanum is used as a medicinal plant by Hawaiian people and other people too. Okay. Okay, now moving on to the sunflower family, also known as the Asteraceae. Okay, so these are a lot of different flowers or inflorescences. Okay, each of these look like a single flower, but they're actually groups of flowers grouped into a formation known as a head or capitulum. Okay, so you have yellow chamomile, crown daisy, Coleostephus, Myconus, Marguerite, sow thistle, etc. Okay, Cape daisy, lower right-hand corner. Okay. They were also known as a compositae. They're the second largest family of flowering plant families. Okay, with about 20,000 species named. Okay. So the individual flowers are actually called florets, and they're small and numerous and arranged in a head. Okay, that's the name of the inflorescence, a head. Okay, so these are different kinds of members of the sunflower family that are kind of economically important. Lettuce, endive, chicory, Jerusalem artichoke, globe artichoke, dahlias, chrysanthemums, marigolds, sunflowers, thistle, and tarragon. Okay, so we have some nice images here. Lettuce, endive, chicory, Jerusalem artichoke, dahlias, chrysanthemums, and thistles. Okay, so the chrysanthemums are a source of pyrethrums, which are used as insecticides. Okay. Okay, now we come to the monocots. So far we've been giving you a survey of some of the flowering plant families that are dicots. Now we're getting into the monocots. Okay, so we have the grass family, okay, also known as Poaceae. Okay, Poaceae. Right, there's a grass inflorescence. Okay. They were also known as the Gramineae. Okay. The flowers are wind pollinated. So the calyx and the corolla are reduced to scales. You don't really need a corolla if you don't need to attract an animal pollinator, right? The stigmas are feathery so as to catch as many pollen grains as it can that the wind blows. And the leaves sheathe the stems. Okay, so here's a look at a grass. There's inflorescences at the top there, with the leaves sheathing the stems, as you can see there. Okay. Now, the grass family includes wheat, barley, rye, oats, rice, and corn. Okay. So there's more than 1 billion tons of cereals harvested every year worldwide. Okay. But mostly in Asia, North America, and Europe. Okay, that's the northern hemisphere, right? Another member of the grass family is sugarcane, okay, which supplies the world's 80% of the sugar supply of the world comes from sugarcane. Okay, this plant can grow to 20 feet tall. Okay, and of course it changed the history of the Hawaiian Islands. Okay. Because of the sugar plantations and the workers actually brought in to work the sugar plantations. Okay, actually changed the makeup of the populations of humans on the islands. Okay, now we come to the orchid family, known as the Orchidaceae. Okay, this is the biggest plant family with more than 35,000 species. Okay. And the flowers are varied in size and form, especially. Okay, flowers are the habitats are diverse. Okay, and the flowers of Anglicum may be 18 inches long. Okay, so here's an Anglicum. You see the spur, the long skinny thing hanging down there, at the tip of which would be nectar. right? These are probably moth-pollinated flowers. They have a sweet smell and they're fragrant at night. Okay, here's another look at an angraecum. Aren't they beautiful? I myself have a propensity toward white flowers and green flowers. That's my own personal taste. Now, Gramminophyllum may produce 10,000 flowers, and the plant can weigh more than a metric ton. So there's a plant in a tree. Look how big it is. Yeah, that's the kind of plant, the epiphyte that can actually knock down a branch. Okay, and here's a look at the flower. Okay. Now, Rhizanthella gardneri grows and flowers underground. It's a great picture, great photograph of Rhizanthella gardneri grows and flowers completely underground. It's an Australian orchid, discovered by accident by a farmer plowing his field. Now, in the orchid family, they're identifiable because you have flowers that have 3 sepals and 3 petals. Okay, so what is that? Think to yourself. Of course, we know it's a monocot. Okay, now one of the petals differs from the other 2. Okay, and that forms what you call a lip or a labellum. Okay, another feature of the members of the orchid family is that the stamens and the pistil are united in a structure known as a column. Okay, and the anthers have sacs of pollen that are known as pollinia. Okay, and the stigma, the functional stigma is a sticky depression on the column. Okay, so here you see the 3 sepals are the pointed parts to the sides, bottom, and on the top. And you have the 2 petals that have the pink in the center, and then you have the lip or labellum. And opposite the lip of labellum, kind of nestled in there, is a column. Okay, and you can just barely see the anther cap there. Okay, if you actually took the anther cap on, there would be pollinia that could stick to your finger on there. Okay, that's what they call the column, with the stigma further below the anther. Now, the orchid family also have tiny seeds, and they're like dust. Okay, they generally don't have endosperm usually. Okay, they're produced in large quantities. Okay, so some fruits can have 1 million seeds in them. Okay, and each seed only has a few cells, so they must associate with sympathetic mycorrhiza. Remember mycorrhizae, the root fungi? They live in symbiosis with the plants. So many orchids may take 6 or more years to flower. Okay. So here's a look at some orchid fruits. Okay, with the seeds inside there. Okay. Of course, orchids are among the most beautiful and prized of flowers. Okay. There's developed a large industry to do with orchids, with culture and propagation of orchids. Look at that Paphiopedilum. Gorgeous thing. Okay. Now, there are only 3 species of native orchids in Hawaii that are native to Hawaii. All right? I'm going to show it to you, them to you. Okay? One of them is Anectochila sandwichensis. And all of them are rather small and inconspicuous, kind of greenish flowers. I would say, and they're only a few inches tall usually, okay, but they're very pretty, okay. And you also have Liparis hawaiiensis, and this is what it looks like. Another greenish kind of flower, okay. And then we also have Platanthera holocala, and this is a rare and endangered plant, okay. So I would encourage everybody, if ever you're out hiking somewhere, like in the forest, and you come upon a native orchid, please do not take it. Just leave it where you find it, okay? Because they're very special, and they have special requirements. And usually if somebody collects one of these plants, they'll die if you bring it into culture and try to grow it, Okay. Now, is that an orchid? Okay. Most know orchids if they see an orchid. Okay, especially known to us are the dendrobiums, the cattleyas, the vandas, the phalaenopsis, and the oncidiums. Okay. So we see here dendrobium, cattleya, vanda, phalaenopsis, oncidiums. So how to identify any kind of orchid, or any orchid as an orchid? For one thing, the orchid seeds are very small. Okay. Remember that they're only a few cells large. They don't have endosperm. Okay. So they can be tricky to germinate and grow. Okay. That's why they have whole industries of people that kind of get work and run nurseries to germinate and grow in tissue culture orchids. Okay. So they have symbionts and friendly fungi, and in that case both parties benefit, of course. You have the orchid benefiting because the fungus helps the orchid to get food and water, okay? And the fungus benefits because the orchid gives it a place to live, right? So how do you distinguish an orchid from other flowers? You look at the flowers, just like any other kind of flowering plant. Look at the flowers and or the fruits. It has 3 sepals and 3 petals. Sometimes the sepals and 2 petals can be similar, okay? But always one petal is different from the other 2 petals, okay? That forms a labellum or lip. Okay, here is a dendrobium orchid here, kind of nice color, little droopy looking in shape, very attractive, okay? So you have 1, 2, 3 sepals, 1, 2, 3 petals, okay? One of the petals distinguished from the other 2 in looks, okay? Another thing is that many orchids have a pedicel, or the stem for the flower, that twists 180 degrees. So if you look behind an orchid flower, you'll see that the stem is twisted behind it. Okay, it's called resupination. Okay, and resupination usually leads to the flower with the lip being the bottommost part of the flower. Okay, even though in some encyclias and in epidendrons the lip is uppermost. Okay. Also remember that the male parts are joined to the female parts. There's a column opposite the lip. Okay, and the pollen is aggregated into pollinia. It's not loose and powdery like you see in most kind of flowers. And further down the column is a stigma. Okay, so here you can see the 3 sepals in the back, the 3 petals, which are the 2 wider petals at the side, and the lip at the bottom, which is the 3rd petal. Then opposite the lip, you see that little knob sticking out. That's the column. Okay, and that's actually the sexual part of the flower. Okay. Another thing about the orchid family is they have extreme pollinator specificity. So in many cases, only a single species of animal, usually an insect, does the pollination for a particular species. Okay? And because they have this extreme pollinator specificity, they're extremely vulnerable to changes in habitats. If the insects go, so do the plants. They can't make any more plants if the pollinators go. Okay? So after pollination and fertilization is affected, the fruit that develops is a capsule, and the fruit, a capsule, is dry when it's ripe. Okay? It opens up along 3 or more seams, and it will disperse the numerous seeds, okay, tens of thousands to millions. Okay? So here's a look at Spathoglottis plicata, which is a naturalized orchid in Hawaii. It actually comes from Southeast Asia, but is naturalized into the Hawaiian environment. It does self-fertilization or self-pollination. Sometimes the flower is barely open. Okay. And here you have a Phalaenopsis orchid. a Zymbidium orchid, and a Schomburgkia over there on the right. Okay? All right. Anyway, so that's what we have for you today. Okay, that's what we have for you for the second part of the review. Hope that you enjoyed it. I know it was a lot of information. Please don't stress out too much. Okay, just relax. Yeah, and be sure to send me any emails or any messages that you want. If you want to have any questions that you want me to answer, okay, you can email me. Come see me in my office hour. Okay, or you can call me on the phone. Okay, the phone number is in the syllabus. Okay, so until next time, aloha and good luck on your studying.